Hey, you're back with Bobby, and today we're discussing, is Bitcoin a good investment in 2024? We're going to go through 7 of the most common questions that people like yourself type into Google and YouTube to learn about if Bitcoin is a good investment, discussing the risks, what Bitcoin is, how you can make money, and all of these different things. So let's dive right in. So first off, we need to talk about what Bitcoin is. So to take a step back, accounting has operated in 3 ways historically. One, in biblical times, there was someone at the city center who would manage the debt and write it down and track it for the community. Over time, we evolved to shared spreadsheets and databases that would be shared in between individuals. Bitcoin is now the third innovation, where it is a public distributed ledger where anyone and everyone can download the software and run it and verify this information. So we've gone from this being tracked from one person to shared between a group of individuals to now anyone and everyone has full access. This gives auditability and clarity to anyone who uses Bitcoin, where they can see the history of transactions and use it themselves freely. Also, more importantly, it's an open source software that anyone and everyone can use to send and receive money without middlemen. You don't need to rely on using the Visa network, where it can take 60 to 90 days for payments to settle, nor do you need to worry about a bank, which has delays and isn't open on the weekends. It's 24/7, accessible to anyone with a device and an internet connection. These are some of the most basic things about Bitcoin, but let's dive into some deeper questions. How much money do you need to start in Bitcoin? Well, the good thing about Bitcoin is it is divisible. So just like $1 has 100 pennies, one Bitcoin has 100 million Satoshis. A Satoshi is a fraction of a Bitcoin. So within one Bitcoin, there is 100 million units. Now imagine if you could break a dollar down into smaller fractions. You could send smaller amounts. Well, with a Bitcoin, because it can be divisible down to 100 million Satoshis, this allows for micropayments. And one thing that's fascinating about the internet is there's no ability currently to do micropayments, where you can do small fractional amounts and streaming money, for instance. What's cool is this is actually possible with Bitcoin, and there's technology enabling and empowering this. So not only are people using it across the globe for sending payments, but you can also use it for sending payments online in ways that were never before possible with some of these larger networks that require a tremendous amount of overhead. The one thing to remember though, you can get started with a couple of dollars investing in Bitcoin. You don't have to buy a full coin. What is the biggest argument against Bitcoin? Well, you'll hear arguments that Bitcoin is a Ponzi, or the government can shut it down, or will it go to zero? All of these are very good and intentional questions one should ask before investing, and it's important to understand the answer. Those who say Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme. Typically, a Ponzi scheme is something where someone buys it with the hope of selling it to someone else. If you study the last 15 years of history, a lot of folks that choose to buy and hold Bitcoin don't want to sell it for more dollars. When we look at dollars, and if you've been around for the last 2 years, you've seen that the money pie is expanding at a rate at which a group of people are determining. On a whim, when they want to print money or change interest rates to manipulate the environment of how the free market works, they can do so. With Bitcoin, there's a predefined issuance schedule. There are 21 million coins, and every 4 years there's a halving event where the supply entering into the market is reduced by half. This is determined ahead of time by the open source software and the code base, which makes Bitcoin very reliable and which has made it desirable, and which is why we're seeing it grow in scale and adoption over time. There are consensus rules that everyone must operate by. It gives a fair playing field for all participants. Second, the government will ban it. Folks are concerned that the government may not allow Bitcoin. Well, we've also seen over the last 15 years that China has quote unquote banned Bitcoin mining, 5, 6, 7 times. And what's fascinating is the network continues moving along. There's something called the Bitcoin hash rate, which is the rate at which how many new pieces of hardware are coming online to mine and earn Bitcoin. And it continues to go up. Even when a China ban happened a few years ago, you'll see a large drop in hash rate, and these miners took their miners and left the region of China and went somewhere else where there was low cost and abundant energy. All of those miners came back online, business as usual. One thing about quote unquote banning Bitcoin is it would have to be banned globally in a completely coordinated effort, which has never been done before, and it only gets stronger. One thing interesting too is Texas is the state in America with the largest mining facilities and total mining in the world. Texas is a state that is very powerful in the country of America, who really values state rights. It's been very key to strengthening their economy. Not only has it created jobs, but it has also stabilized their grid and given more consistent power to those in need, and has helped save them during blackouts, which you can go Google this and read all about it. It's a fascinating way in which Bitcoin is revolutionizing the energy market. All right, let's take a step deeper. What are the risks of using Bitcoin? Now, there have been hacks in the past of exchanges and of third-party services, but there has never been a hack of Bitcoin. Now, you'll see in the news that a lot of news articles like to conflate these Ponzi schemes like FTX or BlockFi or some of these exchanges that will hold people's money for them and go do these gambling efforts like you see on Wall Street in order to make more money. The risk of leaving Bitcoin on an exchange or leaving your money with a third-party custodian is, are they up to nefarious behavior? The risk of holding your own Bitcoin really comes down to this. Are you willing to withstand short-term volatility? Anyone who's heard of Bitcoin and has seen the price movements over time, they know it goes up and down. But historically, over the last 15 years, it's up and to the right. So the real question is, the risk of Bitcoin is, are you willing to withstand short-term volatility? And more importantly, you need to be intentional about not leaving your money with a third-party custodian and trusting them, because a lot of times they may be doing nefarious things, lending out your money, gambling it, or doing something that isn't in your best interest, just as we've seen with many of these platforms over the last few years. So if you're concerned about risks with Bitcoin, the biggest risk is, number one, not giving your funds to someone else and trusting them because they may not be trustworthy. And part two is managing and holding your private keys. It is quite simple in essence, where you can derive 12 to 24 words, which is your passkey and your phrase to access your Bitcoin on the blockchain. And as long as you keep that, you will never lose your money, nor will you have much risk. There are ways in which you can send money, which we'll discuss in another video, that make it verifiable and easy to know where you are sending it and how to send it without making mistakes, but that'll be for another video. As we say in Bitcoin, don't trust, verify. Hold your own keys. That is one of the key value adds of Bitcoin compared to other forms of money. Another question, can you make money with Bitcoin? I think there's kind of two answers to this. One is, yes, you can buy Bitcoin with dollars, and when the price goes up, sell it for dollars. But as we discussed earlier in the video, the dollar is constantly going down in value. It doesn't retain its value over time. So if you do sell Bitcoin and for dollars, have a reason you want to spend those dollars in the economy. But if you want to preserve your wealth, if you want to keep your wealth long term, like we've discussed, if you look at the chart over the last 15 years of the value of Bitcoin increasing due to the level of adoption and innovation happening, Bitcoin is meant to preserve your wealth. It's meant to protect your wealth. It's a tool that you can use where you can say, hey, I do not want to participate in holding the dollar as savings because I know someone is going to continue printing it to fund war or to fund the economy or to use when it comes to issuing debt so that we can prop up the GDP of our country. Bitcoin is the way to separate yourself from the fiat debasement and the loss of wealth like we are seeing across the world. In America, we're very lucky. We have the world reserve currency. We don't experience as much inflation. But if you look across the world, the average currency fails every 25 years. The euro is 25 years old, for instance. And every currency fails, and anyone who saves in that currency typically loses their life savings. Thank God we live in America and we don't have to experience that the way the other world does. 7 billion people know this intimately. We're lucky that we're not necessarily in that bunch. How does Bitcoin make money? Well, there's a few ways in which you could think through this question. Bitcoin miners make money by mining Bitcoin and earning it and providing value by securing the network, and they get paid for doing so with the Bitcoin block reward. But for you as an individual, more importantly, how do you make money with Bitcoin? Well, just like we kind of answered before, by purchasing and holding Bitcoin, you preserve your purchasing power into the future. A few years ago, a home might cost 50 Bitcoin. Now, if you go to buy a home, you might be paying 10 to 12 Bitcoin. So therefore, by saving in Bitcoin over time, you end up spending less on goods and services. Whereas others, if they were saving in dollars, they may have bought a home for, let's say, $200,000, $300,000. Now the average starter home in America is maybe $475,000 to $500,000 depending on where you live, you end up paying more. So this is a clear and practical example of answering this question. Lastly, why is Bitcoin the safest cryptocurrency? Well, the problem with cryptocurrencies broadly is they have a CEO that issues it. There's one throat to choke. It's not decentralized. It often is funded by venture capitalist investors, and there is a pre-mine of sorts where coins are handed out to investors in the original team. And what's interesting about this is venture capitalists love this because it allows them to work around some of the standard free market things in place. So let's dive into this. Typically, whenever there is a liquidity event in a business where an individual gets to cash out their wealth, it's due to one or two things. Either a merger and acquisition, where their company is bought by another company, or two, they go public on the stock market. And when it comes to venture capital and crypto, by issuing tokens, they don't have to wait for a merger or acquisition. They don't have to wait to go public. They can buy these tokens at a fraction of a penny, and then when the value goes up over time, because retail people trade it, like you see with Solana and these other tokens, they can now dump those tokens that they got very early on retail investors. And this is why over time, over the last 15 years, if you go look at really any crypto out of the hundreds of thousands that have been started, they may go up in value in the short term, but they always go down over time because they don't hold inherent value. Hopefully that's very clear. Now let's talk about why is Bitcoin, quote unquote, the safest. Well, one thing about Bitcoin, again, is there is no CEO, there is no throat to choke. It is a decentralized ledger where anyone can download and run the code. It's really the best form of a pure public good where anyone who comes on and uses the network doesn't hinder anyone else using the network, and it's publicly accessible to literally anyone with a phone and internet connection. Bitcoin is so freeing for individuals and why they choose to use it in other countries, because you can take your money anywhere in the world as long as you know your private key, those 12 to 24 words. In other countries where they're under authoritarian regimes or capital controls, they may have their money confiscated. There's things called bail-ins where the banks take the money of depositors and they lose their life savings. With Bitcoin, you can save your wealth and carry it anywhere you want without having to have anything physical. Unlike gold, which is large and heavy and hard to verify, Bitcoin is verified by the Bitcoin blockchain. You know you're receiving Bitcoin whenever you receive it to your own node, specifically the software we've been discussing. And this gives you the ability to not have to trust who you're doing business with. You can verify this due to consensus rules. So I hope this helps. This is 7 common questions people ask whenever they think about, should I buy Bitcoin or should I invest? And in 2024, these questions are more important than ever. We're at a time where money is being manipulated and expanded more than ever. There's government subsidies that fund things that are not necessarily good or healthy for the economy. And many people are electing and choosing to move their money into something that cannot be manipulated, that does not have a central planner, that has legs and is being used globally. A lot of folks in other countries choose Bitcoin because it's the only way they can protect and preserve their wealth. And while we don't have this problem in America in such a drastic sense, a lot of us are starting to feel it. Inflation's painful. So if you're thinking about considering investing in Bitcoin, I hope this has shed some light. If you have any questions, please share below, and I'd be happy to discuss more. But have a wonderful day, and please like and subscribe. It makes a world of difference helping impact other people's lives and their educational journey. So thank you.